Hello everyone and welcome to an Animal Rights Show special. Smooth as a baby's bum, that intro.
As always. Cheers, everyone.
Well, if you remember, going back a while, it was a bit croaky, wasn't it? Like me, actually, but there you go. Now, just for people, because I know they're bound to be interested, I've had my second test and I'm still positive, so that's why the croaky voice. And but now Wendy, pin your ears back. This is going to be a problem, right? We're under a time constraint today. Now, this is something that the Animal Rights Show never likes to hear. And we've got to release Benny on the hour because he's part of the Sky extravaganza, which starts at hour 4 p.m. Right, people.
He'll be released at 4.
Yeah, liberated.
Yeah. Release Benny.
Eject Benny. I'd love to see him just fly off like that. I'd be amazing. And then land in the next box for school.
If Nella was here, I was going to say, look, it's Benny and the Jets, but it ruined the joke. But Nella is held up at the dentist, so she may or may not appear. We'll see. And of course, we have a special guest panelist, Benny Malone. So welcome. So, Benny, were you christened Benjamin?
No, and I'm not going to reveal my real name.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, is that not even your
Benny
real name?
Is Benny is just what everyone calls me, really.
Ah, did you? Is that after Benny from Crossroads?
No, I think from, Benny from ABBA, I think.
With a Benny hat.
Benny beanie hat.
Let's get old also.
Right,
Benny from Crossroads, Benny from ABBA, Benny and the Jets, of course.
Benny and the Jets.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're a bit pushed for time, so I'm going to make a start if people don't mind. So this is an addendum to my last time tunnel, and it's before the next one, which is tomorrow. And so they're all related in the sense that last time I mentioned, or I was going to mention, my concerns about Tom Regan's Culture and Animals Foundation, but I forgot to do it. So this is exactly the reason why we're doing this. But those of you who know me know that I regard the treatment of Tom Regan by this movement as being absolutely appalling. And in terms of the foundation, I think my concern now is that his legacy after death is being made less and less visible. And that's within the foundation that he and his wife, Nancy, begun in 1985. And so to me, that's a concern. So that's what we're dealing with today. One indicator of this treatment of Tom Regan is the Animal Rights Hall of Fame, if people know that, and it's run by the Farm Animal Reform Movement, now known as the Farm Animal Rights Movement. And that's been going since 2000. So Tom Regan was finally inducted into the Animal Rights Hall of Fame in 2016. So that's 16 years in and a year before he died. So neither he nor Nancy were well enough to attend the event. So they knew, in other words, that he was very ill by then. Now, Martin Rowe accepted the award. Now, Martin Rowe is one of the staffers, I believe, or at least has got something to do with the Culture and Animals Foundation and also Lantern Books. Now, the people inducted into the Animal Rights Hall of Fame before Regan include, and I've got these written down here, Ingrid Newkirk, Carol Adams, Cleveland Amory, who wasn't a vegetarian, Gene Bauer, Karen Davis, Alex Hershaw himself, the founder of Farm, Jack or Chuck Norris of Vegan Outreach, who will remember they came to regret having vegan in their name, Paul Shapiro, Peter Singer, Henry Spearer, and Paul Watson. So all of those, as it were, made it before Reagan. So Martin Rowe accepted the award, and he did outline Reagan's rights-based view and his rejection of utilitarianism. But the weird thing about that, for me at least, is that he said that Reagan would thank everybody in the farm audience for working, quote, to end cruelty to non-human animals. Now, I think everybody on the panel knows that if he was going to say that, he would do it with a major caveat, which is basically that is not the fundamental problem. Okay, and so just to say that, I thought was a little bit odd. But well, there you go. This is our movement at the moment. So this is Alex Hershaft of Farm, and this is his blog. Now, this is really interesting for me because he seems to be switching his position a little bit, which is really quite interesting. He's looking back here in 2020 at 20 years of the Hall of Fame, which he began in 2000. And the first item is the people who launched our movement. Now, Tom Regan is on this list, and it's also kind of year on year. And so I think that amounts to why these people are first, if you like. But we've got Jade Dinash, I think that's the way you pronounce it. I think that's how Hershaft pronounced it. Introduced the concept of veganism in the USA in 1960. Now, he was recently on the David Ram's show. This is Alex Hershaft, and said that Jay had found out that the Vegan Society in England had started in 1960, and that's what got his interest. Of course, that's not true. It was 1944. And then the response to the development of a vegan society in England was to launch the Vegetarian Society in North America, which I thought was a little bit weird. Then we've got Peter Singer, introduced the concept of animal rights to the United States public. And of course, I mean, we all know this, that this is the main thing that is ever said about animal liberation. And it's not true, right? And so this has always been a kind of major problem. And I think a major irritant to poor old Tom Regan. In fact, he has said that a few times. You know, he said he got sick of seeing his views being attributed to Singer and this kind of stuff. Then we've got Cleveland Amory again, the non-vegetarian. And then this is interesting. You got they do feature the case for animal rights very heavily here, which is interesting. And right at the bottom there, you've got Tom Regan. But I will come back to that. And I was thinking, well, maybe this is part of Alex Hershaft's change in attitude towards Reagan, in the sense that when he introduced the Hall of Fame in 2016, he did say that Tom Regan should have been inducted a long time before. But he also said that it was like a panel. There was like an award panel. And then it got voted on by the people speaking at the Farm conference. And so for those 16 years, essentially then, if Reagan's name had been there, he was voted against by all these people attending the Animal Rights Conference. So again, for me, that is problematic. And then just a little bit of an aside and maybe a joke is that this is what he says at the bottom of his article. Melanie Joy has become our movement's leading intellectual. So I don't know whether, well, I won't agree with that, but I don't know whether Wendy and Benny will, but there you go. But going back to what they say about Tom Regan, said that that he wrote several books and not least the case for animal rights, which he says the case is the Bible of our movement and remains so. Now, the only time I've heard the phrase Bible of the movement, it's been in relation to animal liberation. So I thought that was quite interesting. And that's what I thought, well, maybe Hershaft is kind of shifting his position on rights and Regan and everything. At the same time, when he was on the David Ram show, which was only 2 weeks ago, he didn't mention Tom Regan. And he said that animal liberation was the start of the movement. And he said that the grandfather of the movement was, again, Cleveland Amory, who wasn't a vegetarian. So it's kind of confused in a way. So in my notes, I've got since when? Since when has the case been the Bible of the movement? So I thought, well, I'll have a look. So I looked at the farm website, see if they sell any books. And they don't seem to sell any books at all on their website. But there is a list of books associated with the name farm, which you can get up with a search. Animal liberation is there, in fact, several times, but not the case. And so, as I said, when Hershaft was on the David Ram show, again, only 2 weeks ago, he didn't mention Regan when he was talking about the history of the animal rights movement in North America. He mentioned animal liberation, of course, and he gave a particular shout out once again to Cleveland Amory. So I thought, well, if there's nothing in farm to suggest that the case is the Bible of the movement, let's have a look at Peter. I've always, in fact, I used to have a petition for Peter asking them to change their blurb about animal liberation because it's false and they know it's false. So it's called the definitive classic of the animal movement still. And the blurb that is very misleading. Now, I know people on the phone are not going to be able to read this. So it says, details animal liberation by Peter Singer, referred to as the Animal Rights Bible. This book includes an in-depth examination of the use of animals for food and experiments and puts forward a revolutionary animal rights philosophy. If you read only one animal rights book, it has to be this one. So, Wendy and Bernie, have you ever seen that blurb before?
No. What a load of old shite, honestly. I can't believe. I mean, it's just perpetuating myth after myth, isn't it? All this absolute codswallop. I'm trying to be very tame with my language, as you can tell, which is rather challenging in this situation. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I suppose this is the issue now, because it is, as you say, it's kind of perpetuating this myth that has gone on forever now, and part of it is treating Regan appallingly, totally ignoring his position. But then again, Peter would totally ignore Singer's position as well, because Singer keeps saying, I'm not an animal rightist, but they insist that he is. And so they kind of, well, you are an animal rightist as far as we're concerned, mate, kind of put up with it. This is the British version of Peter. And so they've got a book of 12 vegan books. Number 2 is Animal Liberation, the vegan book in which it says that he cannot find an ethical problem with free-range egg production, this vegan book. The blurb here, although I'm sure you can't read it, doesn't contain any lies, at least, but so it's a bit better than the North American one. So there's no changes then in terms of this status of the case suddenly becoming the Bible of the movement. Not that I would actually like that, because I don't like that phraseology in the first place. It makes animal rights sound like a.
And actually, within when you speak to like sort of the more newcoming activists as well, like, hardly anyone has heard of the case for animal rights, let alone read it. But people often have at least heard of animal liberation, even if they haven't read it. But you do find a lot of, and this is a bit of a generalization, just people that I've spoken to, a lot of people don't really go in for the reading of the books anymore anyway. So their introduction to animal rights is more through YouTube videos and social media, things like that. But the awareness at least is there of animal liberation and Peter Singer, whereas there's very little awareness often of Tom Regan and the case and things like that.
Hello, hi guys.
You can make it.
Sorry, I'm late. A doctor's appointment.
Yeah,
you'd have smoke coming out of your ears as well if you were sitting here listening to some of this. Right,
I'll go back and start again. No, I won't. So yeah, I mean, I agree with Wendy. You know, the thing is, I suppose the movement would say, look, you're making a problem which doesn't exist, kind of thing. But of course, Tom Regan thought it existed, and it is the foundation, that we're talking about. And so I'm just going to switch to that, which is, so this is Tom Regan and Nancy Reagan's foundation. And now I think both me and Benny, we were familiar with this for a good while, a few years, obviously, but it's changed recently, Benny, and all the tags to the Reagan stuff is kind of archived, you were saying.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was an article which had frequently asked questions and Tom Reagan's answers to those, and also quite a good little summary of animal rights position. On that
it used
page.
to be. You see this about thing that's just dropped down.
Yeah.
It used to say Tom Regan, and when you clicked on that, there would be all these. There'd be videos and links to various stuff. Now it goes to the Reagans, right? And so this is Tom and Nancy Reagan now, which is fair enough. But then the things that have kind of almost like being invisibilized slightly are in a whole list of very small kind of links in the text.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of arguments here. First of all, the kind of audience that you might get for the Culture and Animals Foundation, they might very well read this article, which is not that long, and they also might go to all the clips. But in terms of its accessibility, it's nowhere near what it was, I think, which is, for me, a bit of a problem. The first link just goes to the book, so that's fair enough. And then we've got where are we? It's actually difficult to actually see them on the page, funny enough. Then this is really interesting. It says in 2000, NCSU established the Tom Regan Animal Rights Archive. And what do you get when you click it? Animal rights and animal welfare. So yeah. So, and then the first thing is about the RSPCA. So
this is an external now anyway, and I think it's the same for a couple of the other.
They all go to external ones now. That's right. Yeah. So
it's
you've
not
got
actually
the Tom
hosted
Regan
on
Animal
the
Rights Archive.
Do you still get the speeches though? Like the Sword of Justice and his speeches?
I couldn't find those actually, Nella, when I was looking.
No,
they used to be there, didn't they?
I'll show you where they are. That's the point. Yeah. So this is the autobiography. Again, so this is the if you like, the third link, I think, third or fourth, and then you're down to the Animals Voice magazine. Again, like Benny said, it switches you to an external site. So we're not in the Culture and Animals Foundation anymore, but they do have the famous 88 speech, and they do have a very late interview with Reagan when he was showing signs of being ill. So it's quite sad to watch that one. And then we've got a selection of a comprehensive website, and then we're back, I think, to the same thing. And then we get to where we need to be. So as you can see, it's a lot of links and a lot of stuff later. And then we've got, you can watch the videos. So this is what you get if you click on the videos, right? So then you've got them in these categories. So the ones that we know are going to be here. Now, I was very grateful to find that this is still the Animal Rights Zone version, and I'll explain that in a minute. so that was good. Then it's just summing up the same place. And then this one, I didn't even know about this. This is a vivisection debate. That is quite fascinating. So I've been sharing that around this morning. I was a bit distracted by it.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah. Then there was there's documentaries and all that. So in other words, they are here still, but they're on an external site now, and they're kind of, you've got to really search for them. And the real question, I suppose,
you have to want to find it. Yeah, it takes a bit of digging.
Yeah, how many people are going to go from this to that? So you've got a link to go to, then you've got links within that link. So that to me is a bit of a worry. I mean, I'm not saying it's fatal or anything, and it's not as though they've scrapped everything and made Tom Regan totally invisible, but it's it's pretty close. It seems to me, in the sense that we know what people are like online. If you don't find something straight away, you're back on watching Sesame Street or whatever it is. So, that seems to me to be, a bit of a concern. So
I understand your concern. My main concern is that by hiding this, in a way, it's like hiding the ontological approach about other animals. And you may believe that rights are not enough. I may believe that rights are not enough, or that they're pretty basic, or whatever. But the thing is that when we talk about other humans, we based our judgments on the ontological belief. And I think it's very important to be able to do the same about other animals. At least we use the same, the same criteria. That's why I think that the ontological approach, it's necessary, and people must be aware of it. So I think that you're right to be concerned about it.
Yeah,
I know. It seems like, and I know when this show was first put together with you, Roger, and Jeremy, and then obviously Nella and I joined, and Tom and everyone else. One of the points of putting together this show was actually to put forward a voice that actually speaks about actual intrinsic moral rights, because it's not been spoken about, it's not being talked about, it's not being put out there. There's no narrative hardly at all in any of the platforms, and people are so caught up in welfare, in kind of Peter Singer's kind of utilitarianism and all this stuff, that we wanted to be that voice. And it is very niche. We realize that we're very niche, but yet we felt it was important to put that out there. And so to go to Tom Regan and Nancy Reagan's own foundation and find that it's also being pushed into a niche little corner is, I just found it astounding, really. And I feel that it's so sad. And it's
kind of depressing, isn't it? Because if there's going to be one place where Tom Regan's going to be shining light, it's going to be the foundation.
And his own foundation. Yeah.
Every other website already pushes everything else. So it's like with the vegan thing a lot of the time, if vegans don't educate about veganism, who will? And it's the same for animal rights. If animal rights aren't able to advocate for animal rights, no one else is going to. This is the page
I brought this up. This is the document you were talking about, right? And we can't find this now, but I'm sure it must be. Well, you see, that's the thing. You see, Benny and I were looking for this document during the morning, two of us, and neither of us could find it. And so that there kind of shows the problem. If you're looking on Tom Regan's site for one of his major essays, you're not going to find it. And so this is really, kind of upsetting in a way. So anyway, about carry on, Benny. Sorry.
So, and then one day I just couldn't find it, and I actually raised it as an issue to Kim Storwood, because I'd posted about it on Facebook. I used to link to this page. It was really good for the kind of questions and answers. It really lays out animal rights and then some objections and replies to them. So that's the type of thing I always post, because that's kind of what I deal with.
Okay, but so the link that you used to be posting, if you've still got that and post it now, would it come up as an error now, or would it still go to this?
Yeah, I'd have to check that on Facebook, actually, if I can search my Facebook and see where I posted it in the past, maybe. I think it just went to an error, because this is kind of like a Wayback Machine one where it shows you what used to be on the website. So it's kind of, this is archived itself. And I mean, Kevin Watkinson found this for me, because I could never even find it when I wanted to after that. So what I did is I kind of saved it to my emails, and now I have it pinned on my Twitter so I can get to it easy, because, you know, otherwise you'd have problems even finding it on Google, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's very, very interesting, isn't it? So I'm gonna go back to this, because about almost 3 years ago now, so we talk about February the 26th, 2020, I wrote to the Culture and Animals Foundation, and to raise the concerns, not least because I'd found that almost as soon as Tom Regan had died, they appointed Peter Singer to the advisory board, and that's still on the website now. And so someone suggested that I wrote to them, and so I said that to the people. I've taken all the names of this in order to protect the guilty. And I said, in relation to my concerns that I have about Tom and Nancy Regan's Culture and Animals Foundation, Peter Singer has been appointed as advisory member for the foundation. You'll know that Singer and Regan clashed on many things, not least in terms of the philosophical approaches. Regan describes Singers as morally bankrupt. Now, I'm going to show a video in a minute, but I want to ask us all a question about whether any of this means anything to anybody in the movement, as far as we know. So Regan describes Singer's approach, and therefore the main movement's approach, as morally bankrupt. While Singer does not believe that rights are a good foundation to build a moral argument, in the blurb on Peter Singer in the foundation site, it says, quote, Peter Singer's path-breaking book, Animal Liberation, in which Singer speaks in favor of veganism and against animal experimentation. So I just raised the question, would Tom agree with either statement? And I don't think he would, because neither of those are true. No. Apart from clashing on the issue of having sex with other animals,
that was abhorrent. I mean,
sorry?
That was abhorrent. I mean, it's a blatant violation of rights, having sex with other animals.
It's just, I know.
Well, I mean, Regan wrote...
Probably we have to have these conversations with them, can you? Like, do we even have to have this conversation? But it's like, really? It's just...
Yeah, but this conversation now is with an advisory board member of Tom Regan's foundation.
Singer wrote that article as well, didn't he, about
heavy petting, the
animal consents.
But that's what created the response from Regan, which is having sex with other animals is a rights violation.
Yeah.
And so he answered all that. So he said that I said that Tom was critical of Peter Singer's stance on vivisection, although Singer's position on animal exploitation is indeed a nuanced one, which is true. On veganism, Singer still appears to be a flexible vegan, as evidenced by this recent video. Singer does not believe in moral rights, the very basis of Tom Regan's The Case for Animal Rights. So shouldn't that fundamental difference be at least mentioned? In the video section of the Tom Regan tag, which is now gone, on the foundation site, Tom's A Case for Animal Rights, which is included in the 1989 BBC Animal Night debate. This is Regan's quintessential statement of animal rights. So there are two versions of this video. Now I'm going to show you a very short video, which I've clipped out about a minute from the two different videos. Now I've got one edit in it, but the other edit is already there in the first one. So I'll explain that when I come on. But this is essentially what it is. The first version, the one included in the foundation site, Regan's critique of utilitarianism has been edited out. Here, without naming him, Tom declares that Peter Singer's philosophy is morally bankrupt. The second version, not on the CAF site, includes the critique of utilitarianism. To fully do justice to Tom's position, I suggest that the first version is replaced by the second. Somebody pointed out that neither of the versions of the video were produced by CAF, and I said, well, yeah, but I'm not claiming that anyway. It's just that they've chosen to feature one. Now, the interesting thing is the videos with the edits have got a lot more views than the videos without the edits. So therefore, if people are going to come across Tom Regan's 1989 opening statement on animal rights at the British Institute, they're going to find the edited version. Now, but my question to the panel in a way is, do you think even if, well, I'll tell you what, let's watch the video first and then I'll ask the question.
Of these people demonstrate.
Dr. Regan, could you do your best to bring your remarks to a close?
The choice thoughtful people face is not between either helping humans or helping other animals. One can do both. We should do both. Is it rational?
Right, so you saw where it dips and comes back again. That's where the edit is on the more popular video, right? And then the next edit is mine going to the full version. And so then I'll show you what's being taken out. Okay, so let's see if we can work out.
Impartial, scientifically informed of these people demonstrate.
Dr. Regan, could you do your best to bring your remarks to a close?
The choice thoughtful people face is not between either helping humans or helping other animals. One can do both. We should do both. Will the objection be finally that no one has rights, not any human being and not any other animal either, but rather that right and wrong are a matter of acting to produce the best consequences, being certain to count everyone's interest and to count equal interest equally? This moral philosophy, utilitarianism, has a long and venerable history. Influential men and women, past and present, are among its adherents, and yet it is a bankrupt moral philosophy if ever there was one. Are we seriously to inquire into the interest of the rapist before declaring rape wrong? Should we ask the child molester whether his interest would be frustrated before condemning the molestation of our children? Remarkably, a consistent utilitarianism demands that we ask these questions, and in so demanding relinquishes any claim on our rational assent. With regard to the philosophy of animal rights, then, is it rational, impartial, scientifically informed?
You're muted, Doug.
Yeah, I knew I'd do that. I unmuted myself first.
You muted yourself.
I know, yeah.
You can't even blame us. You can't even.
I know, yeah. Yeah, you can't even do it. Well, so I can't blame anybody now, can I? So there you go. So the second one then, obviously, is the unedited version. And all the critique of utilitarianism is missing. So the question is, if people watch the full one, do you think animal advocates will know that he's having a go at Peter Singer first and the main movement second? Do you think they'll know that? Or do you think it'll be rather lost on them?
I think it'll be lost on some. I think the kind of people that we get on the show watching us will know exactly what what he's talking about and what we're talking about. But there are other people who are not really in this kind of discussion very often, and maybe haven't been exposed more to like the philosophy of animal rights as opposed to utilitarianism, things like that. They might not really figure out that he's talking about Singer in particular, or the movement generally. I don't think people would, because I think most people who consider themselves a part of the animal rights movement would agree with what Tom's saying, but not realize that some of the philosophies that they might follow or adhere to are along that path. Do you know what I mean? I don't think most people would. I think most people would agree with Tom.
I agree. Yeah. Most people would agree with Tom, and my impression is that the rights approach is more popular than we think. Very often, I hear things in outreach events that come out of from Regan's book, even if the people using them don't know who Tom Regan was. I mean, in a way, these arguments have found their way in our outreach arguments, obviously by older advocates that used to be very familiar with Tom Regan and his arguments, but they are still there, and people believe in rights. Even people that sometimes go to welfarist arguments in order to convince the audience, in their heart, they believe in rights. And I think that most other animal advocates believe in the deontological approach about other animals. They really believe in rights. They see no difference between the right of a human to have rights and the right of another animal to have rights. And I'm talking about moral rights, not legal rights. So I think it's a shame that the one corner of the internet that should highlight and present this approach is currently hiding it in a way.
I did get a reply, actually, fair play, as we say in Ireland, the same day to my email, and they said thanks for pointing it all out and thanks for taking a in-depth interest in the site or something like that they were saying, and which might kind of be a tale in itself. You know, most people don't look that deeply, and they said they will implement what I asked, but the thing that was never implemented, what they took the line about Singer, vegetarianism and veganism and animals, they took that out, but the bit about pointing out the difference, that was never there, you know. And interestingly, recent blogs from Alex Hershaft, he started to point it out a bit more now, because he's talking about the ontology with Regan, and he's now adjusting his position on Singer, but being very careful with the language, still saying that Singer kind of started the animal rights movement, but then said that, well, it's actually not rights, it's utilitarianism. If you want rights, kind of go to Regan. So that's quite new, but that just creates more confusion with me, because if he's changing on Regan and Singer, he goes on David Rams 2 weeks ago and doesn't mention Regan. So that doesn't make any sense to me either. So what do you think, Benny? Do you think people will
think they
know
worry
what Regan
about
was talking about?
the vision? Yeah. I don't know. I was just going to say, I think people worry about, oh, there's this division in the movement, but what movement are we talking about? If it's the animal rights movement, then there is no division if you're going to be bringing up Regan, because that's what rights are, you know. It's when you start bringing consequentialism into that's when there's division and confusion. But yeah, obviously, I think you know, part of Regan's writing was pointing out what the difference are, and that it was not consequentialism, and that was quite key to the case as well. So you can't really avoid saying these things.
Well, the fear I had, in a way, was I was wondering about, will Benny, Wendy, and Nella think that I'm kind of exaggerating the point or kind of worrying about nothing? And so I was going to go, reassure me that I'm overreacting, and that'll be a good thing probably. But none of you have done that, so that's interesting.
No, you're getting us all fired up, Roger. And fair play to you for sending that email and for keeping tabs on these people, and you know what I mean, holding people to account a little bit for what they're doing. I say fair play to you and well done, and I'm glad that you're highlighting these things.
What we should do is all four of us should send them an email once a month going, we're still watching, but
well,
no.
watching you, cow, watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was thinking maybe
even going back to the Hall of Fame,
you know,
I mean, like, wouldn't you think that the Animal Rights Hall of Fame, the first name would be Tom Regan, wouldn't it? The Animal Rights Hall of Fame. It goes to show that phrase is not that meaningful. That's the problem.
Yeah, and actually, it was called the Animal Rights Movement even before Tom Regan came along and delivered this groundbreaking philosophy, wasn't it? Because even back in the day when a lot of the animal rights movers were merely vegetarian and just, you know, or even and not even vegetarian sometimes, you know, they were still kind of almost calling it the animal rights movement in a way, or it was, well, people refer to that as animal rights, and it's like, well, how, even though it wasn't like the moral rights that obviously Tom really goes into such depth with, but
yeah,
it's
this is
become an umbrella, hasn't it?
In fact, Norm Phelps, who will feature tomorrow, said this. Yeah, he mentions both of these, but Bridget Brophy, he says, was the beginning of animal rights thinking in North America because of the Sunday Times article. Right, folks, we're out of time. We've got to release Benny.
Release the Benny.
Release Benny. Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm getting all kinds of messages here. So, okay, folks, thanks for indulging me and joining in, and we'll see you next time.
I'm just going to go and throw darts at my dartboard with Peter.
Bye, everyone.